and welcome to Kara's Kitchen. Just like I said in my previous video, we are going to be making banana bread today. This is a redo. I didn't really like the way the first one turned out, but that was also my very first video, so we're kind of going by trial and error. But at the very least, I at least know how to bake and cook. So without further ado, we are going to go ahead and get started, and I have all of our ingredients laid out. I will go through them step by step, and I'll also be at a different angle so you can see everything that I'm doing and how I have everything measured out. Let's get started. Okay, so in my bowl I have 1 stick or half a cup of butter slightly melted and 1 cup of sugar. I did use white sugar, but you can do a mixture of white and brown sugar. That would be half a cup and half a cup. So I'm just going to stir this in. I do kind of a folding method, so you go around the bowl and in towards the center. And I also kind of stir it in just a little bit, and then I go back to the folding method. We'll be doing this quite a few times as we go today. Okay, so now that we have that all mixed together, we're going to move that over just a little bit. Now you do want brown bananas for this one. You can either do what happens for the most part here and use the bananas that just get left out on the counter, or some grocery stores do have a little section where they have older produce, and they'll generally be a little bit cheaper than the regular bananas. Or if you just have regular bananas, you can put them in an oven at 350 degrees for roughly 5 minutes. They will turn black, but you do not want to burn them. And then they'll get all mushy so that we can add them in easily. Now my trick for this is I just mush them in the peels themselves. That way my hands don't get dirty, and that way they go in nice and easy. So just kind of mush all 5 of them here, just kind of going around, making sure you're feeling all of them, making sure there's no firmness in them, and they're nice and squishy. All right, this is number 4. I tend to use 4 to 5 bananas, just because I feel like it makes it a little bit more moist. It doesn't make it quite as dense or heavy. It makes the dough or batter nice and loose. And that way it just overall comes out better, because no one likes any type of mealy or dry banana bread, right? Okay. So now we are going to add in our bananas. Just squish them right on in there. Okay. It's number 3. 4, and our last one. 5. Good. And we'll discard these right over here. All right, we are going to mash in our bananas just a little bit. We don't want to fully stir them in just yet. We just want to break them down a little bit. And then I'm going to make a little bit of a well in the center right there. I'm going to put my spoon right there. So at this point, we're going to be adding in 2 eggs. Now, if you aren't quite comfortable with eggs yet, you can crack them in a little container off to the side. That way you can check and make sure there aren't any eggshells in your batter, because no one wants that. If you do feel a little bit more comfortable, you can just put them right in. For the sake of demonstration today, I went ahead and just put them in a little container. Kind of look around, notice there aren't any shells in there, and then we'll just add it right in. Okay. And we will beat them just a little bit. That way they're easy to stir in. And we're going to go back to that folding method. So around the bowl and in, just like that. Stir the center a little bit, and then back to the folding method. And just kind of go back and forth until it's all incorporated. Okay, you do want those nice big bits of banana in there. That way when you bite into the bread, you have some nice mushy places where it's just all banana. It's gonna be amazing. Okay, so now that we have it pretty well incorporated, everyone's made friends, they're all married in there. Now we're gonna add in our vanilla. That way we have all of the wet ingredients in together. There we go. It turns a nice tan color there. Okay, so now we're going to put this off to the side here, and we are going to work on our dry ingredients. So in here I have 1.5 cups of flour. Now the way I measure out my flour, just to show you here, is I get my measuring cup, I get it just a little bit full, right over the edge of my flour pot here, because you don't want flour all over the place. I push it forward a little bit, that way you know the entire cup is full, and then I just scrape the excess off, just like that. That way it's perfectly measured, and you also don't want it heavily packed in either, otherwise it's going to create a very dense batter. So we have our flour. To that we are going to add a little bit of cinnamon. This is 1/2 teaspoon. We are going to add 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And we are going to add 2 small pinches of salt. So 1 and 2. And just my personal preference, I use pink Himalayan salt, but there are all sorts of different types of salt out there, sea salt, table salt, really whatever you want, just don't add more than a couple pinches. You don't want it to be too salty. So we are going to mix this all together. And if you have a big old-fashioned sifter, you can use that. I prefer to use a strainer and sift it in that way, just a little mesh strainer. That way I can do little bits at a time, and I can fold it into my dough little bits at a time. It just makes it a little bit easier. So we're going to put that off to the side just a little bit. We have our dry mixture and our wet mixture. We're going to put just a little bit in at a time, like so. And just pat it in. Not being too crazy to where we're getting flour all over the place. Just enough so that it gets in there and it's all smooth. So that's what we're aiming for, is a nice smooth batter. And then doing that folding in and stirring motion. And we're going to do that just a few more times. Okay. Now, the way I came across this recipe was growing up in Torrance, California. There used to be a farmer's market that we went to. Maybe every week, maybe every other week on a Saturday. And they always had all sorts of different stands with banana breads, zucchini breads. There are also fruit stands and vegetable stands. You can get eggs, meat, fish, all sorts of things. And we would always get a thing of banana bread and a thing of zucchini bread. So one day when we were living in Scottsdale, Arizona, and not able to go to a farmer's market, I decided to look up a recipe, and I came across this one. I tried it, and it was the closest to it that I've come in a long time. And over the last few years, I don't know, 8-10 years, I've kind of perfected it for myself anyway, and added a few little things here and there to this recipe just to kind of make it my own. All right, so last little bit of flour going in here. Perfect. This off to the side. And this will be our last bit of folding in here. So at this point, we have most of our ingredients together. If you are one that just likes banana bread and you don't want any nuts in it, then at this point, once you get it all mixed together, you will be ready to get it in the bread pan or the muffin tin and in the oven. But there are a few people out there that like the banana nut bread. And if you are one of those people, this is how you do it. So we have it all mixed together. You're going to notice it's loose, but it still has a little bit of heft to it. It's not completely watery. You still have those big, beautiful pieces of banana in there, but everything's all incorporated. So here I have about half a cup of chopped walnuts. I added in half a teaspoon of flour, just because when you put the walnuts in, if you put them in just by themselves, they can all sink to the bottom. This just kind of helps them stay suspended in the batter. That way, in almost every bite, you get a little bit of walnut. So we're gonna go ahead and sprinkle half of that in, like so. We're gonna reserve the other half for the topping. So we're gonna do that folding in method. It won't take a lot to get it all incorporated here. And you also don't want to overwork your batter. So just a few little stirs here. Perfect. Okay. So now we have our bread pan. With this, you can use a cooking spray. Personally, I prefer this method where you grease it and use a little bit of flour. It just makes it so it slides right out once it's done. You can use butter or shortening or oil. For today, I'm going to use a little bit of shortening. I'm just going to put it right in the pan here. You don't need a whole lot, just enough to coat it. Get it all on the edges. And then you're going to get it on the bottom really well. Just want to make sure it is nice and coated so that none of that batter sticks once it's baked. There we go. So now that we have a nice light coating on there, we're going to add just a little bit of our flour. Okay, and we're going to coat it just by tapping. So I'm just going to go to all four sides here and tap it, turn it and tap it, just to make sure it's all covered. And I'll get a little bit on the counter too, because why not? It is a kitchen after all. All right, and then we're going to discard the excess because we don't need all of that flour baked in there. We don't want that flour taste on our bread. Okay, so you see it's nice and coated evenly, and it has all of the edges where the banana bread is going to be. So you're going to take your batter here. You're going to do roughly half of it. Now this will make either a dozen muffins or 2 loaves. Today I'm going to do 1 loaf and 6 muffins, just so I can show you the 2 different techniques. So you're going to roughly half it, put the lip of the bowl right in the middle of your bread pan. That way you don't get it all over the place. Tilt it and just scoop it on in, just like that. And then we'll kind of get the edges a little bit here. That way you don't lose any of that dough. Okay, we're going to use the back of our spoon just to smooth it out. Make sure it's going to be nice and even in our bread pan. There we go. Okay, so now we have our bread pan done. For our muffins, now you can use the paper muffin inserts. I just decided to use some parchment paper with some butter on it. So you're just going to squish it on in there, like so. Get a quarter cup measuring cup, and you're just going to dollop it right on in there. There we go. And you do want to use a measuring cup, that way you know that you're getting the same amounts in every single cup. That way no one gets left out, no one gets too much or too little. Okay, we're going to do this second one here. Good. Got just a few more. And then once we're done getting all of our batter in, Then we're going to add the remaining nut topping on. That way, once it comes out of the oven, it has that nice, crusty, nutty top. There we go. And that way you not only have that nice, crispy bite of walnuts on top, but you have those walnuts baked in. And living here in Central California, we do have a decent amount of orchards around here, so we are able to get some fresh walnuts and almonds when they're in season. But of course, not everyone's able to get that. So, you know, when it's not in season, we just go right to the store and we get them there. They also freeze really well, surprisingly. Don't know if anybody knew that about walnuts and almonds, but you can put them in the freezer and store them for 2 to 3 months if they're stored properly in a freezer bag. And they keep pretty well in there. Okay, so last little bit here going in. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to do just a little sprinkle of our walnuts here. Just a little bit. Making sure that we're getting it evenly on all of them. And then I'll sprinkle it on our bread here. Perfect. So now we'll put this into our preheated oven at 350 degrees. For the bread, it will take about 40 to 45 minutes. For the muffins, it's going to be 25 to 30 minutes. Once those are all baked, we are going to have some beautiful banana bread. Let me go grab it for us real quick. So we have our banana muffins. I did this batch just plain. Our banana bread, you see that beautiful nut crust on top there. This is actually going to be a gift, so I have it nice and wrapped. All you have to do is a little bit of plastic wrap and fold it on the bottom. And then this is another plain loaf. So you'll notice that there's a nice dark color. It's going to be a little bit spongy to the touch, just like that. You do want it to bounce back just a little bit. And when you insert your knife, you don't want any batter, so it's going to be nice and dry. These ones are already cooled, but make sure you check it right after it comes out. You might have a little bit of banana on it, but you don't really have to worry about batter. If you see it all the way up to the top, that means that's batter. You need to put it in just a little bit longer. Okay, so we have successfully made our banana bread and our banana muffins. Do keep in mind that these can keep in the fridge for up to 1 week, or you can put them in freezer bags, just like I mentioned with the almonds and walnuts and everything before. You can put them in a freezer bag and freeze them for 1 to 1.5 months. And this is going to be wonderful comfort food that you can give to someone or keep for yourself. You can have for a nice warm breakfast, or you can even use it as a dessert with a little bit of vanilla ice cream or some caramel drizzled on top. But enough about my plans for this banana bread. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure you subscribe. Stay safe. Next week we are going to be going into our chicken parmesan recipe with an arugula salad. Again, it's going to be a recipe with nice, simple ingredients, and it'll be put together in no time, but it's going to look fantastic, like you've been in the kitchen for hours. Everyone's going to be super impressed, including you. As always, all of the recipes are going to be put down below in the description box, as well as any links to where the original recipes came from. That way you can kind of see where I put in changes, if there's anything you wanted to change yourself that you wanted to add, or even if you make it yourself, please be sure to put it in the comments below, and take pictures of anything that you make, because I'll be so excited to see all of that. So thank you again, and we'll see you next time here in Kara's Kitchen.